it's never too late to be different and create opportunities for people that look like you. Take that step. The more you try, access will be granted. And that is the most important thing, that we will ensure that we create a pathway for you globally to create that said accessibility to achieve all you need to do and be great at what you do. Gone are the days of looking at mining only. Gone are the days of looking at natural mineral resources only. There's human power resources that you need to capitalize on and grow them and give them the entrepreneurial skills they need to actually flourish, and you get that back.
Pat. It's Pat on brands. Watch how you branded, man. A pat on the back is a pat from the man. Better be branded, man. A pat from the pat is a pat on the...
Hello everybody. Welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Pat on Brands podcast with me, Pat Masamu. Today, we're making history. We have our first international guest. A brother born in Nigeria, brewed in Detroit, America, and everywhere. I mean, anywhere in between in the world. He's been to almost every continent in the world.
That's right.
Mr. Osas Ukhurebor. Please correct me if I butchered your surname.
Right on. You have it right.
Yeah. Also known as Peter.
Yes.
Are you Peter to white people and Osas to black people? Which one is it?
It's Peter is my Christian name. I was named Peter. But my African name is Osas, Osarimefo, as a long form. So Osas is short, so most of my friends know me as Osas. Awesome. And my close allies.
Great stuff. I mean, you've got a very interesting journey, but one also that is, for lack of a better word, from an academic point of view, not unique on our platform, because what you find is that people go study medicine and do geological sciences and do mechanical engineering, and one way or the other they find themselves in the marketing world or doing advertising. So yeah, you studied geology.
Yes.
In Nigeria.
Yes. So I started out as a geologist. I went to university to study geology. I never thought one day I would end up in advertising. But I remember when I was back in school, I think it was my third year, and a friend of mine introduced me to modeling. And
you're also a model?
Yes, briefly actually.
Okay.
So I went into an advertising agency for the first time, and I saw a lot of cool people. Yeah. And they were wearing their jeans. They had dreadlocks. They had all that stuff, and they were in the corporate scene. Yeah. Like, F it. I really want to be like those sets of folks. Wow. I really want to be free. I really want to be able to control myself and bring out my level of creativity. And that's how I started out to look at what advertising can look like for me. Yeah. And I went to taught about it initially. Then I went to the Advertising College of South Africa in Cape Town. Yeah. Then I studied advertising, and that's how my journey started into the advertising world.
Amazing. I mean, but also just taking a step back in your geological and F sciences journey. I mean, you got a magna cum laude, so you're not a dumb person. In that course, you did pretty well.
Yeah, it's I love the earth. I love nature. I love studying about what makes us unique in this world, and that's the first thing that brought me into that field. And that's why I wanted to study that. But after graduating, I decided to choose a different part. Yeah. And that's why I ended up in advertising.
So you didn't do any geological work?
No.
Internship? Nothing?
No, so
I didn't. You come out of University of Port
Harcourt, yes.
Yes. Then come straight down to the southern tip of the continent to study advertising.
Yes, I did.
Sure. And your first gig, do you remember? Outside of the modeling gig.
it's My first gig was with an agency in Cape Town, a small agency. I think it was Global something. I forgot what your name is. Yeah. I started out and we were working on a project on augmented reality, and that was just the era of it. And that's how I started out. Then worked with in South Africa. Worked briefly with agencies like Jupiter Drawing Room, and moved back to Lagos and worked with agencies like Ogilvy, where I started out as an art director and became a copywriter, and that was my journey into the advertising industry. It took me about 15 years.
15 years in the game. Any regrets?
No.
You love it.
No regrets. I love advertising, the thrill of being in the industry and understanding and working with various brands around the world. Today you're working with a medical brand. Tomorrow you're working in the automobile. And part of me as a youngster was diversifying my way of thinking and being who I want to be. So I can be someone when I'm working with a particular brand. I can be working in the medical field, or I can move into AI or move into specific areas, and that's the flexibility of advertising gives you. But it also gives you the ability to be able to study different parts of what life is, because the major goal of advertising at the end of the day is to make people's life a lot easier and tell them what is new. For example, the fridge was brought in to make people's life a lot easier and how you can keep your food. The same way with a microwave, the same way with a car. So advertising is just to tell you what is new and what is capable of making your life a lot easier.
Wow, amazing. So any career highlights? I mean, obviously we'll talk about the can later on. I'm pretty sure you've won a couple in your journey, but what has been the biggest highlight?
I would say for me, it's working with brands like Ford. We're working with GTB in Detroit, and working with brands like Pinterest, or working with global brands from Unilever to Hire, and that for me has given me a diversity of thought. And those I would say was my pinnacle was when I first wrote my first TVC commercial back in 2009, and so that was a thrill to see my work on TV. So the idea of being able to see what you do and bring that to life, it's part and parcel of what I live for.
Sure. So having worked obviously in different parts of the world, I mean, in the US, in the UK, Nigeria, I mean, South Africa, how would you, from a South African perspective, because I mean, the majority of our audience is South African, although with you, we are going global. How would you say South Africa is faring in the sort of advertising realm on a global stage?
South Africa is known as one of the most creative countries in the world. It's won a lot of lions. There's practically almost no global agency within South Africa that is not proud of at least one Cannes Lion award. But that being said, it's very important to understand that creativity in Africa and South Africa alone is unique. But yet we don't see the profitability, especially when we look at a minority group that the work is being showcased from. So it's imperative that we understand that even though globalization of South African creativity is immense, when it comes to who gets the creds for those work, it's coming out from a particular sect, while the ones who are actually the ones who are writing those said copies and those beautiful ads are not being given a chance to actually showcase what those opportunities are on a global stage.
Sure. Any of your favorite South African brands that are doing great work? Any of you?
I've seen a lot of great work. It's I don't want to call names. I have a lot of friends. I don't want to piss off some people. But I've seen some amazing campaigns from especially from my friends like Olisa with is it Chicken Licking campaign?
Chicken Licking,
and No One Is From South Africa campaign. That they were chasing everybody away. That was an amazing campaign. To ABN Devs.
Nando's.
Yes.
Yes.
It was Nando's.
Yeah,
yes, it was Nando's. Yeah. It's them with the Baki at the end of the campaign. But at the end of the ad, that was amazing. To the ABN Bev ad that actually won a Grand Prix at Cannes, talking about the ills of domestic abuse and all that. And yes,
Black Label.
Yes, there's been some amazing ads that have come out of South Africa that have attained global recognition, and that I'm very proud of. And especially those campaigns were championed by Black creatives.
So, I mean, the year 2020, I mean, we watching news, open social media, we hear about the tragic death of George Floyd, and somehow that got to you, and that made you spring into action to say, hang on a second, there's gotta be, some serious talk and some serious actions being taken in terms of diversity and inclusion in the advertising industry, which is really our burning question for today, which is why is inclusion so important in the advertising space. But before you answer the burning question, just take us back that moment when you saw that video, someone kneeling on George Floyd's neck and him saying, "I can't breathe." What went through your mind then?
Simple. It's, as a father, it went through my mind of thinking about my son, someone holding them to the ground and actually putting their knee on them, and the fact that they can't breathe, and that was very, 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 very emotional for me, and the fact that America still has systemic racism, and the fact that a lot of issues that were underneath were predominantly not seen, even though Black people have cried out for years that there's been systemic racism, whether you're driving a Mercedes Benz or you're driving a Polo or a McLaren, you get pulled over, right? The first thing that happens to you is you're Black before you're anything else, whether you have a PhD or you have matric in South Africa. It's the first thing that they recognize, is the fact that you are Black. So that for me was very emotional, and that led into a lot of conversation with global agencies and global groups, and that's how we started out to actually go into creating the idea which we now have, and which has been four years in running.
And that idea is Black at Cannes.
The idea is Black at.
Oh, Black at.
So Black at Cannes.
So it could be Black at anywhere.
Yes, it could be Black. Tomorrow we're Black in Johannesburg. We're running around 13 cities around the world before Cannes next year, from to Sao Paulo in Brazil, to LA in the US, to Toronto in America, to Dubai in the UAE. But the most important thing, that what started as a movement with Black Art, was simply the fact that we saw that there wasn't any representation of us within the advertising space like there ought to be. We are predominantly at 5.8% in the C-suite, and we run about 7.8% on all of the levels. And we started having conversations with global agencies like WPP, and Mark Reed was up and thinking, what can I do to make this better? Just like every other CEO around the world was trying to find out what other ways they can do to actually cause change. And we had the same conversation with the Cannes Lion team, and that's how we're strong with Cannes, because Cannes is the mecca of advertising, and anyone who is in the advertising space understands that if you really want to be recognized, whether you be it a brand or whether it be an agency, you have to be able to have one certain status at Cannes. So we decided to say, how can we have this journey? Because there wasn't any representation at Cannes, so we decided to say, have the conversation with them, and they were willing, and that's how the conversation started post post the pandemic, and we started out by ensuring that the system and the structure that's been created has certain level of diversity included in it.
So when you started, obviously 4 years ago, it was just an idea, a vision, and you obviously got people around and shared the vision. Would you say 4 years in, have you scratched the surface, or you just started?
I will say we haven't scratched the surface yet. I will say there's so much work still to be done. And the way we started and the encouragement we had initially has dwindled with the fact that diversity and inclusivity is no longer the focus of what most brands think or most agencies think that it should be. Because there's a cycle, it's a 360 cycle of when something happens and people are tuned to it, and they become empathetic about such situations, and that happens over time. So we are not hoping that there's another George Floyd, that there has to be recognition in the industry, but we've seen that the trajectory of what happened initially on the support we had has actually dwindled compared to what we had in the past. So while most agencies and most brands made a lot of promises, some of them were kept, some of them were basically just a facade of what they wanted to do without actually trying to make real impact or real change. So what we've noticed to those people that really want to cause change, shout out to Phil and Simon Cook of Cannes. The bottom line is they didn't stop, and they continued with the idea of how we can actually cause change. And when you look at what change is, it actually creates a system that is effective for your business. And that's what we decided to say. We are going to be encouraged by people who are really interested in making real changes, and not those ones who want to please their clients by just coming up with the idea and saying we're going to put 10 black people here and show that we actually are trying to cause some change, which in an effective way that doesn't happen, because within 6 months those kids are leaving the agency, or they're going to find other lines of business to actually make a living.
Sure. I mean, I remember reading an article by Mark Ritson. I'm not sure if you know him. I think he's with at Week, and it was, and the title was "If Black Lives Matter, Why Aren't There Black Board Members?" So my question to you is that perhaps this diversity and inclusion sort of conversation, the fact that there aren't enough black board members, who are making critical decisions at these particularly brands, because I think the brands tend to influence the direction in which the agencies, can go as far as inclusion, the diversity and inclusion is concerned, because they hold the past, so they can sort of dictate and say, hey, why aren't we seeing people that look like this? Therefore, we're not going to partner with you. Would you say there is a direct sort of correlation or relationship between ownership of these brands that we're talking about, that we say they need to be, transformed in South Africa? We call it transformation from a diversity and inclusion, and of course, how the advertising industry portrays itself and behaves?
I will say that's part of the problem. Why I say part, it's because that's one-sided, because the fact of inclusivity on the board is very, very important, and bringing women in, bringing multiracial people, Black, Hispanics, Asians, and all that is very, very important. But also, when we understand that what happens is this, we as Black people need to first of all solve our problem. And our problem is we don't want a situation where we're looking at the only Black. Because the first problem we have is the only Black issue.
Gotcha.
And we have I want to be the only Black person there, right? And when they get in there, they are more contented with where they are, not actually trying to make any change. But it's different.
But once they get in, they close the door.
Yes. It's different when we have the Asians and the Indians, especially the Asians, the Indians, the Chinese, or the Hispanics, or the white people. They don't care. They are more encouraged to bring more people that look like them into that present situation. And for us, we need to have an indoor conversation, first of all, on why do I want to be the only black person there? And to understand that if I'm in a situation or in a place of power, that I can bring in more people, and I have that issue where I can now tell whoever is on that board that we need to get more representation. It's very vital that we have people who really want to speak for our community and not just being there for themselves.
And collect big fat checks.
That's it.
So, I mean, earlier on you mentioned that Cannes is like the mecca, of advertising. And I mean, every year, we see people on social media, some of us, because we're not yet at that level, flying up to Cannes. We see lots of champagne, being drank there, lots of parties. And is that what Cannes is all about? What's happening? What is it that an average person doesn't know and see about, being at Cannes?
Now, that boils down again to the second problem I said. Like, in the past 3 years, but let me give you a little history of what we've been doing.
Yeah.
In the past 3 years, right, we've created a system and worked with the Cannes team to actually infuse more black judges. It's prior to that time, you had only about maybe 1 or 2 black judges from South Africa every year. The first year we started, we increased that number from 2 to about 8 black people, right? And these are people who have been part of teams that have won Grand Prix, but they never got the ability to actually represent their agency.
Ability or opportunity?
Opportunity, right?
Yeah.
So they've never been put forward by the agency. Not because they are not there, but they've been part of winning teams. So we understood this, and we understand that for us to create change, the first step to do is to ensure that we create a systemic way that our people can actually have more opportunities. So when we did that on the first year, that's for South Africa alone. I'm talking about across the continent.
Yeah.
And when we did that alone for the first year, we saw how that improved and cost more opportunities for people that look like us. Then we moved on to the year after that. We saw last year, we saw the first West African agency in 70 years of the existence of Cannes. Yeah, West African agency won a Cannes Lion. And the only reason why that happened was because there were enough people in the room to understand the kind of campaigns that were coming out from West Africa to be able to say, yes, I can understand that kind of campaign because it resonates with me.
Yeah.
So the fact that diversity in the room brings a lot of creativity is immense to be able to put that in. So for us, that has been our drive to ensure that there's enough diversity in the room, and we created that pathway not just only in South Africa, but in Brazil, in Europe, in America, to bring people that were not there before to be part of the winning team and create that structure in place. And for us, that's how that now led into more opportunities for Cannes. So what does a lion mean as a creative or as an age or as a brand? It means that you get more opportunities. We've seen that happen where people, for example, GOT is an agency out of, I think, Brazil or Argentina, Brazil to say. They won 60% of all the Grand Prix last year. Correct me if I'm wrong. But after their win from an independent agency, they've gone global. Now, clients are willing to give them more business, right? They just recently launched in New York this week, right? They're coming into South Africa. They're going to Europe. They're creating more opportunities because they won alliance, right? So that increases your client spend on you because they see that you are a creative house. It increases. That automatically means you can hire more people. That means that you can grow your business. You can keep your lights on. So winning a lion or being part of that system, it gives you an opportunity to grow. You can meet new clients. You can meet new business, new opportunities. You can grow. You can partner. And that's what the lions do. But when we now have a system where people that don't look like us that go over to Cannes are there to do business, they do business between 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. and party from 9 p.m. till about midnight, while most of us, or some of us that go down there party from 8 a.m. till 2 a.m. in the morning without having a reason for going there.
Sure.
And that has become the problem, that we don't understand that this place is a place of business and we are there for a reason. And the reason why we are there is not to party, but the reason why we are there is to ensure that we are on the winning books. There's only one African agency won this year, which is a pity. And it's a global agency, TBWA. It's horrible the fact that we have so many agencies, and that's part of what we now decided to do. It's how can we create change by ensuring that we support African-based agencies, Black-owned agencies globally, to be able to put their work in so they can put their lights on, they can get more business, they can become global agencies. There's no Black agency, I repeat, there's no Black agency anywhere in the world that is 51% Black-owned, that is a global agency on record for a multinational global brand. None.
Hectic. I think I need some time to digest that. I mean, in South Africa, we have the likes of, we spoke about Polisa. I think we are one of the largest, or leading rather, independently owned agency. And I'm trying to think about the brands that they have at a global scale. Actually, you're right. There isn't any.
There isn't. The amazing agencies here. There's Two Tone Global.
Yeah.
There is the Odd Number. There's Think Africa. There are a lot of amazing Black agencies here which do great work.
Yeah.
But the bottom line boils down to two things: scale, right? Are brands willing to trust their business to the global scale to actually give them that level of business? One and two of the reasons I will explain.
Yeah.
The reasons being, one, do they get the same opportunities that other people that don't look like them do to give them that try? Two, do they have the accessibility to be able to scale and the funding to be able to get to that level and to be able to hire and scale up to a global stage? And those are the problems that they face every single day in order for them to keep the lights on. So for us, Black agencies are struggling every single day, whether be it in the US or whether be it in Johannesburg.
Sure. So, I wanted to ask, from a global accounts sort of perspective, isn't it, or maybe I'm oversimplifying it here, isn't it that, for example, you get a big multinational brand headquartered in New York, right? And they've got a New York-based agency, and they say, okay, cool, you want to go global. You want footprint in Africa, in, let's say, South Africa, Nigeria, and maybe Kenya. We also want to go Far East. And so can you go down with us, and establish offices there and find local partners, but you will still be our main agency? Am I being oversimplistic here in terms of how those decisions get taken, rather than saying a South African agency that is based, in Johannesburg, then leading a big multinational brand that is based in New York?
Why can't that happen? Why can't the South African agency, right, lead a global brand? Why? It's when we look at South African-based brands that are global, for example.
Yeah.
We have Nando's, for example. It's in about 17 countries or plus.
Yeah.
We have we have MTN. We have all these brands that are African-based brands.
Yeah.
But they are not African-based local agencies that 51% own are not leading the businesses. Why? But we have Wyden and Kennedy, who's an agency in America going global with just Nike, right? And they don't have any international partner, but because Nike is willing to support them and make them grow and say, we want you to go do our business in Norway, we want you to handle our business in Brazil, they're willing to fund and give them the monies and the structure to be able to grow. So the problem now comes back home to say, are the brands willing to give that try to the local agencies to give them the support to grow and go into these markets? Like, I love eating Nando's when I'm in Chicago every time, right? Nando's is amazing, or if I'm in DC, right? And Nando's is in those places. Which brand or which agency is leading that campaign? right? Is it a local-based agency? I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
But I doubted that a South African-based local agency would be leading the campaign in New York.
Yeah.
Right? Because if that is happening, then there ought to be a footprint of African-based agencies across the globe.
Sure. I guess, obviously, with this one, we need to sort of do some fact checking, but it's a very fascinating phenomenon. Like you say, the fact that there's no 51% black owned, not fronting, that really is leading a big multinational account, and but also, I mean, maybe bring it back home in terms of some of the work that we do, because we are on, like I said earlier on, the top 60 owned brands awards, and really one of the pain points that I try to sort of address is that for Africa to become globally competitive from an economic perspective, is that we need to produce strong brands. And where do we start? As you know, Africa is a very young continent. 70% plus of global youth population is estimated that it will be in Africa by 2030 or so. So it's a very young continent, and when you have young people starting brands that one day would go globally, do you think that's a bit of a stretch? It's going to take too long until we get to a point where, like now we have, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Batu, the sneaker brand that's really doing great in the continent. I think it was listed as one of the most admired brands in the top in the Brand Africa 100 report. In the African continent. Do you think the young people of Africa are well positioned to push that drive?
The young people in Africa are amazing. It's they have the goal, they have the bite, but all that doesn't mean any single thing if you don't have the money, if you don't have the support, right? That is very vital for growth, and that is what is lacking when it comes to African entrepreneurship, to actually get that part. And that is part of what we're looking to say. How can African creativity move further, right? What are the possibilities in pushing that forward? And when we look at global brands, we're talking about fashion, for example, and we're looking at Louis Vuitton and how they take African print and African design and make them their own and sell that for a lot of money. Or we look at African-based leather being sold somewhere else in the world and being returned back to us. We understand that we have the creativity. We've seen that with Amapiano, Afrobeat, and we're taking some part of it into what African-based music is now what is known as pop culture, right? So we understand how all this is happening, but yet we are still lacking in the sense of support from local-based brands to actually push that creativity to the next level, because we now understand what the creative economy is. The creative economy, which has about 38 plus subsectors, right, is in the forefront of what any striving economy should be backing right now. But we are still not leading in Africa on how we can position ourselves and bring out that creativity from our very young generation that is projected to be the world's most successful generation in the next 30 years. So the bottom line that comes to it's, how can we be able to create a system to support them, right, and bring out that creativity? And that's what we're looking at, brands that can actually stand up to actually make that happen. And so for brands that can actually make that happen, we can now look at the idea of how we can take that possibility global. So just like we have the Nando's, and I'm looking for Nando's everywhere I go because the food is amazing, right? And I want some part of Africa with me. We also look at what African print should also be looking like if you're striding the runway in New York, or you're down in Paris. So the most important thing for us right now is, how do we structure and strategize for the future by ensuring that the young creative minds actually have a pathway for growth? And that's why we're looking at what the African Creative Fund can do.
Yeah, actually, which is something that I would like you to touch on, in terms of, that's one of the reasons why you're in Joburg today. Yeah. To talk, tomorrow you've got an event that's taking place that will highlight, obviously, various topics, including how to win a can.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Africa Creative Fund, what is that about? How do we get access to that fund? Is it already set out? We've got people putting in money.
So again, we're speaking with African-based brands.
Okay.
A lot of banks.
Of course.
A lot of organizations to say, the world is changing, the world is moving. Africa has been back behind itself on the movement of AI, movement of a lot of creativity, and we shouldn't be behind anymore, because we have the manpower to be able to make change. Yeah. So the most important thing we are not trying to do is the African Creative Fund is accessibility within the subsectors of the creative industry to actually have that access, training, educational needs, funding to be able to get you to the place where you need to and be self-reliant on yourself and be able to bring out that creativity, people you can partner with, ensure that you have the right criteria to actually pitch for the opportunities that you need. That's what the All African Creative Fund is all about. So tomorrow, our idea basically is to let people understand what this idea is as we look towards creating this fund within the next 12 months. But the project, why it's a passion for us, is to understand that the most important thing for us to do, first of all, is to find ourselves and understand that we are trying to solve a problem. The problem is inclusivity and creativity of our own people by us. I was with a friend who designed the For Us by Us idea. Yeah. The most sets of people across the globe who are the most excessive consumers in terms of consumer-based goods and are willing to spend are mostly Black people. Sure. So if we are consumers and yet we are not producing, then it becomes an issue. So we should be producing our own products and be able to use our own products by us, so we can circulate that money within our communities and grow our communities, so we can give more jobs to our people, so we can have more accessibility to more opportunities, healthcare, for the financial institutions being able to support our systems. That is the idea behind it. So the creativity of the African Creative Fund is to give access and opportunity to those people who are willing and who are looking to move on to the next level and taking Africa to its greatest heights.
Yeah, I think one of the articles I read about this Africa Creative Fund, there's a line that said, access, not charity.
Yeah.
Why is it important to highlight that fact that we don't want handouts?
Because the most important thing when people talk about Black people, like, oh no, they just want to come here just because they're Black. And we don't want access to certain things just because we're Black. We want access because we deserve it. We want access because we've worked so hard to get to where we are. And we need that access. And that access is very important for us because access is what derives us from those sort of opportunities. Gotcha. And if we have access and information to be able to get to where we are and where we need to be and to be able to compete with people that don't look like us, hands down, we beat it any day on a level playing field. And we've seen that in sports. We've seen that in music. We've seen that every place we've gotten access to. Yeah. And so when we get that access and the same level of training, we excel in what we do. It's by nature, and that is what we believe in. And we want to be able to get that access to the people who need it.
Sure. Amazing. I mean, I really like that. That you must be given access, but not charity. Then, another topic I wanted us to touch on before I let you go. I see time is just also going by very fast.
Yeah, been a lot.
Culture and brands. That intersection. How is it that for example, I mean, you made mention of the fact that with Amapiano, with the African print, and sometimes when we've seen big multinationals being accused of cultural appropriation, of African print. How can we as a people be able to fully leverage our own cultures, our own sort of levels of creativity, without I'd say, for lack of a better word, having a Louis Vuitton, putting it on the runway, and you say, that's great.
I'll give you a perfect example. It's Black Panther made over $1 billion. Now, go find out who, at the end of the day, receive those checks. They don't look like me and you. But Black Panther was centered around Black culture. It was shot in South Africa, some part of it. It was shot in taking our culture, talking about our conversation. They spoke African languages. And now that is leveraging, even though an amazing director, I love him, he's an amazing dude. But the fact is, again, it boils down to accessibility. If we have an opportunity to be able to tell our stories by us, we can leverage it. And that boils down to teaching our people, first of all, that we need to understand that our culture can be properly utilized to actually make monies for us without someone coming else from the West to teach us that they can use our culture to actually make us monies. And if you look at African-based music 20 years ago, nobody thought about it being this huge. Black Coffee selling out a stadium in New York. Burna Boy is selling out a stadium in London. Right? Afro Nation. I was with Smade, who does Afro Nation in Detroit a few weeks ago, and he's doing amazing. He's doing a show in Portugal. Who would have thought that you go to Portugal to hold a black show? Right? And I get people flying all around Europe to go to that show. The one that happens in Detroit, you have people coming all the way from Toronto to come to that show. Now, that is what our culture drives. So the bottom line is, how do we start to understand our brands, start to think differently, to understand that we don't need to wait for the West to come teach us what we need to do, but we need to now put a listening ear to understand that our culture, right, will drive our brands to a certain level that we've never had before. So where there's an intersection between brands understanding what we do, right, and understanding that culture is of relevance. If streetwise too, for example, in South Africa has pap in it, right, and you go down to Nigeria, it has jollof rice in it, right, and you can now understand that when you're in the US, you have chips and chicken on it. So they've understood what culture is, and they've embedded it into what your brand and your products are. So it's similar to how we are able to drive what we do, and our localization of our products by taking it into our communities is very important for our brands to start waking up to understand that we can actually make more than we do by embracing our culture and embracing what is needed for us to go local and make sure that we can now start from the grassroots and grow that up to a certain level and take it global, where it will be appreciated, just like the music industry is globally right now.
Sure, that's really amazing. What's your favorite Amapiano song? At the moment, there's many of them, I know.
There's many of them. It's I like my boy Tyler ICU. It's amazing. Shout out to Tyler.
Okay.
It's I have various songs I love listening to. It's speaking of Cannes this year, we're talking about Amapiano on the main stage with the Chief Marketing Officer of South African Tourism, where we spoke
about that. Shout out to Tembi.
Hey, Tembi, how you doing? So it's very, very important that we showcase what that is, and that is very, very important for us.
Got you. Okay, cool. So it won't be the Pattern Brands podcast if you don't play the Pattern Brands quiz.
Okay.
We want to test your knowledge about brands, and since we're in South Africa, Johannesburg, South Africa, and you've lived here before,
okay,
let's test your knowledge of how well you know South African brands. Question number 1. You know Makosa?
Yes.
The clothing brand.
Yes.
The luxury clothing brand.
Yes.
Which of the following CTs did they open the store in?
Okay.
Alright, so we've got Waterfall, which is in Johannesburg, recently, just this year. We've got New York, we've got London or Paris.
I might go with New York.
Why would you go with New York?
I'm just saying, I have no idea what the answer is, but I might go with New York.
Why?
It's because it has established itself in South Africa and it needs to move into a global stage, and that's where it currently belongs.
New York.
Whoa.
New York, New York.
Okay.
I have to say it twice.
New York, New York.
Yeah, that's the correct answer. That's the correct answer. You get it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Question number 2. Legends Baba. Do you know Legends Baba?
No, I don't.
You gotta go on Google.
I've heard the statement, but you can go on with the question.
So Legends Baba is a popular barber shop.
Okay.
Actually, they're the leading barber shop brand in Africa.
Okay.
I have to say so. They operate in 5 African countries.
Whoa.
Founded by a 35-year-old in Eldos at the Royal Park.
That's dope.
Jonathan Sheldon Thatcher. So the question is, how many countries, African countries, do they have operations in?
You just said 5. You just answered the question.
No.
Oh, I thought you said 5. You said how many African countries do they have operations in?
Did I say 5?
Yes, you said 5.
Okay, let's change the question. I forgot to mention the 5. Okay. No, we still Legends Baba.
Okay.
How many stores do they have?
Okay.
I'll give you a number.
Okay.
Give you a number. 10, 50, 73, or 105.
Wow. I'll go with 73. 10 is too small, so I'll just go with 73.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Okay, you get a pat. Yeah, so they're in the 70s. Sometimes it fluctuates, but 73 is the correct number. Recently, Heineken Beverages in South Africa, they appointed a new marketing director. I'm pretty sure you've knocked on their door and say, guys, who is the new marketing director for Heineken Beverages South Africa?
I think that should be Andrea.
How do you know?
She's speaking tomorrow at our event, so I guess she's the new marketing director.
Oh my goodness! So now you get another pat.
Thank you.
So 3 out of 5. So you're on the pulse. Eh? Let's see. Okay, you know the people in this industry. Okay, let's test your knowledge. This year, there's a man in South Africa, black African man, in the advertising industry. He's renowned and celebrated. He was the first to get 2, not 1, but 2 honorary doctorates in the field of marketing and branding, in advertising. Who is that man?
The former CM of Google.
Okay, let me give you some names.
Okay. Give me a few names then.
Honorary doctorate from UNISA.
Honorary, okay.
And the University of Johannesburg. Okay?
A few names.
Yeah, a few names. Dr. Alistair Mokoena. Mzamo Masito. Dr. Mzamo Masito. Tebe Ikalafeng. Or Kensani Nubanda.
Oof. I was saying Zamo, because I already said Nzamo. Yeah. I think I'll go with Nzamo.
Are you sure?
Yes.
You never heard of Tebe Galafi?
No, I haven't. So I guess I got this one wrong.
You are very wrong.
Huh.
Interesting. You never heard of he was the first marketing director for Nike when they first came to Africa.
Okay. I've heard of him.
He's been in every country in the continent.
Mm-hmm.
He's a doyen in the South African context. So it's Tebe kind of thing. So this year, UNISA and UJ
I'll give him
honorary doctorates for his work in branding Africa and being a leading
that's dope.
branding
authority. Now I know a little better.
Now you know who to book for the next event. At Cannes next year. Okay, lastly, Nomzamo Mbata.
Yes.
She's a renowned actress.
Yes.
And producer. She's very talented. She runs also an NPO called Nomzamo Lighthouse. And she also won a Yoba this year, or her brand rather, won a Yoba this year. Which of the following banks announced her as a brand ambassador? Is it ABSA, African Bank, FNB, or that bank?
I think I'll go with African Bank.
Because?
They're more attuned. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Okay.
Shout out to Subu.
Okay.
But I think I'll go with African Bank first. If I'm wrong, then it will only be Net Bank. So my first answer is African Bank.
Are you locking African Bank in?
Yes.
We're locking it in.
Yes.
You get a pair.
Whoa, 4 out of 5.
4 out of 5. We've done well. So your South African brand, which is really great. It shows that the time we've been here, we've been knocking on those doors.
Yeah. It's, again, our contingent to Cannes, the largest is always from South Africa. It's and that's what we love about it. We have a large South African contingent every single year. Yeah. Because South Africa has one of the highest numbers of ECDs, CCOs in the creative space anywhere in the world. Wow. Right? From global agencies. And that sells a certain level of creativity, which is amazing. Mm-hmm. And most of them have won awards. And this starts with creating a pattern of people that are quite attuned to global standards. Mm. And part of what we're trying to do is to ensure that across the continent, that creativity has a certain level of standard that meets global reach and global standardization, that they can actually be able to put their work in and actually have wins. What we love about taking African creativity global, it creates a ripple effect for opportunities. So young black kids in Soweto, Langa, Kailicha, Buguletu, and all these little communities scattered around South Africa and across the world can see people that look like them on a global stage, attaining certain creativity and certain opportunities, and say, yes, I want to be like him when I grow up. I want to see the opportunity. I want to live in that house. I want to drive that car. I want to see, because they now see people that look like them, that are successful in things that they love as kids to do, and they can actually be part of it. And that's why I give a shout out to my friend, my lovely blokes from is a Black Door. that has an organization that supports black kids in communities.
Yeah.
And we want to be able to see such. I want to be able to see and support whichever way we can with those sets of people, so we can spring into an era of entrepreneurship across the continent of people who are already making waves and already making those monies and can actually challenge and grow and compete with people from other regions from around the world.
Sure. So on that note, I want you to look into that camera, if you have any message for South African marketers and particularly, young aspiring also like creatives.
Yeah, I have a few messages.
Okay.
First of all, I'll start off with those who work on the brand side. It's never too late to be different and create opportunities for people that look like you. Take that step. 2, to those who are in a creative space, never be scared to adventure of what you want to do. Never be scared to push out your best, because that only propels you to be more. And for those young creatives out there who are trying and working hard, but they're not seeing an headway towards it, keep on pushing towards it. And that opportunity will definitely come your way. The more you try, access will be granted. And that is the most important thing, that we will ensure that we create a pathway for you globally to create that said accessibility to achieve all you need to do and be great at what you do. Thank you very much.
Sure, amazing. I mean, I like that line. The more you knock on those doors, access will be granted.
Thank you very much.
For those that want to stay in touch, keep in touch with you, know where you are next, because I can see you on a mission to visit 13 countries.
Yes. So
June next year.
Yeah. So we started off with Johannesburg. We started year off after Cannes every year. So from Johannesburg we're off to Nairobi, Kenya. From Nairobi, Kenya we're off to Lagos, Nigeria. From Lagos we're going to Houston in Texas in the US. Then we're off to Ghana in Accra in December. Then we're going off to Davos in Switzerland. Then
you're also at Davos?
Yes, we go to Davos. Yeah, doing the World Economic Forum.
That's the
Yes,
that's the mecca of the global economy.
That's what I'm saying. The world has changed to a stage where you now see what the creative economy is doing to countries. And we had Saudi Arabia come over to Cannes this year. So countries are starting to see how can they position creativity at the hem of what they do, and actually starting to funnel monies into that process. And that's why African countries need to start seeing that. Governments across the continent need to start supporting that. And that's why we're going across the cities to preach the good news. We're talking about this again in New York in 2 weeks during the UN General Assembly. So we're trying to push all this information out there and saying how African-based businesses in places where they are to understand that you need to start channeling what your country is doing and what the young people in your country is doing to help them and give them the resources they need to grow. It's gone are the days of looking at mining only. Gone are the days of looking at natural mineral resources only. There's human power resources that you need to capitalize on and grow them and give them the entrepreneurial skills they need to actually flourish, and you get that back.
Wow. On that note, I think that's where we need to leave it, but I can chat to you the whole day. So, I mean, this is a very fascinating topic. So you talked about young people doing, things, and then being given opportunities. And this podcast was made possible by a very young production house called 1-2 Creations. So shout out to 1-2.
Shout out to 1-2.
And of course, the agency that crafts brands that people love. The Rata agency, our agency. So if you're looking for an agency that will make customers fall in love with the brand, the Rata agency is the one to contact. Also, it's my brother.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thanks so much for making a stop on the Pattern Brands podcast. From me, Pat Mahlangu, Inahaila.
Pat. It's Pat on Brands. Watch how you branded, man. A pat on the back is a pat from the man. Better be branded, man. A pat from the pat is a pat on the